Okay, I know what you're thinking. Kylie, Miss Haunted Hippie, you are not an interviewer. You're not a horror journalist. What do you think you're doing, or where do you get off interviewing the director of the Jester franchise, Colin Krawchuk? That is an excellent question. We're just doing something different today. Colin has been so gracious to offer his time today. But first, I do just want to speed run a little crash course on what the Jester is, just because I don't think I've done a very good job familiarizing my audience with the movies, and also just in case my mom and dad are watching. Hey mom, hey dad. So the story starts back in 2016 with the first Jester short film, which can be found on YouTube along with the others. It follows a mysterious magician with an affinity for humiliating his victims, and this is the basic premise for all the short films and both the feature films. In December of 2017, they released Chapter 2, same premise, new victims, and finally in October of 2019, they released Chapter 3, which at the time the team thought would be the last of the Jester. But now here we sit, just a few months after the release of The Jester 2, the second feature film to be made from this property. On Halloween, a young magician finds herself locked in a brutal showdown with the Jester, a nightmarish trickster who practices dark magic. As illusions turn lethal and every escape becomes a trap, she must pull off the ultimate trick to stay alive. Now, is my interest in this story pretty personal? Yes. But in an era where we might increasingly see YouTube filmmakers hit the big leagues, I wanted to dive into Colin and his team's story. We recently saw a bit of a case study on this with Shelby Oaks, but what do things look like on a more independent scale when this happens? We avoided spoilers for just about everything, including the short films, so no worries on that. But if you really want to, go check out the short films first. They're available on YouTube. It'll take you like maybe a half hour, and this video will be waiting for you when you get back. It would certainly help inform the interview, but no pressure. Anyway, without further ado, enjoy our conversation. All right, I've got Colin here. Thank you once again for being willing to talk about The Jester. I hope that you're not too sick of it yet.
No, of course. Thank you for having me.
Sure. So I recently finally just discovered The Jester. I don't know why it hadn't crossed my desk before The Jester 2 came out, but I discovered it. I discovered the short films. I found you on Instagram, and then you reached out. I was wondering what inspired you to reach out to me initially.
I forget where it was, but I saw somewhere that you had started logging the shorts in your Letterboxd.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, hey, this person's watching. They're still watching our stuff. So I thought that was cool. And then you would put out something where you had, I think, watched the first feature. And you had talked a little bit about that and said some nice things. So I appreciated it.
Oh, well, thanks for reaching out. Yeah, I'm glad we could set this up too. But I know that this might be a little bit tired ground for you, but just for my audience that might not know you, because like I said, embarrassingly, I was not aware of the Jester up until now. I just wanted to kind of get some background info on your life because I feel like a lot about a person's life is reflected in their work. So I'm just curious, like, when and where you grew up and if you had any film mentors in life, or who got you involved in cinema, how you initially became interested in film. Just wanted to hear a little bit about all that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Central Florida, where I am currently sitting right now. And went to a technical school for film after high school. That was, I mean, we always joke that the most we got out of that school was meeting each other. Me and Mike Sheffield, the guy who plays the Jester. And then from there, we just started to. It's always that question after any school, I guess, but especially film school, is like, what now? Do I become big Hollywood director man now, or what happens? So, it's. We could do the wedding videography route or the local music video route or whatever, but are we going to hate doing this if we do something like that? So we just decided, well, whatever we do, we're going to do the things that we really want to do. The things that we either really want to make or really want to see. That way, whenever we have time to do these things on the side, it's always motivated by passion and never by, well, I have to work 6 days a freelance this week in a row because I have to, something like that. So we always just made what we wanted to make. And it didn't really occur to us people wanted to see those things or not.
I think a lot of like A lot of franchises like this come out of those kind of happy accidents. And I actually really wanted to ask you about Michael because I feel like I have my Kayleen, who I met in film school, and that is absolutely the best connection that I got out of film school. It wasn't like that lined us up for jobs or anything. And I actually have friends that went on to like do wedding videography and stuff. But I feel like a lot of people need a partner at least to survive like the early stages of the industry. And for me with her, it's like she's really regimented with scheduling and with communication, and I like to focus on the creative stuff. And so we really like balance each other well. And I was really curious about your relationship with Michael, like what initially drew you guys to each other and how you've managed to maintain this partnership, because he's played the Jester in all the shorts and both features now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious about your relationship.
I think the thing that drew me to Mike was we both have this kind of absurdist sense of humor. And there was some, I forget what it was, but we had to write a scene in film school for something. It was like a fake commercial or whatever. And we had to go around the class and everybody had to read their scene out loud. And he was reading his scene. And I was the only one in class who was cracking up at what he wrote. Nobody else was laughing. And it was hilarious. And yeah, it's just like things like that. Like our tastes, our sensibilities have always been really similar. And I think that really helps when you want to pitch an idea or send somebody something you wrote. You don't want to just do that to anybody because people have different tastes and sensibilities. You want to do it with people whose sensibilities you at least understand, even if they might not align on everything. That way, the feedback that you're getting, I feel like, holds more value. And his feedback was always very valuable to me.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also curious, like, who the Jester sort of came from more. I remember in previous interviews you've mentioned that because he is a dialogue-free character, a lot of the direction you give is actually similar for dialogue because you're still talking about like what the character's kind of saying, even if it's just with their body. So how much do you feel like came from you versus like he's actually playing the character, over the years, and how's the evolution of that gone?
That's a good question because there is a lot of experimentation on set when we're doing these things. And then there's a lot of actions that are written into the script. But I do feel like there is something. I was really glad that I got to bring Mike along on that first Jester feature because it's like at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't know what makes the Jester work, but I know he's got something to do with it. So why would I change that? It's like whether it's the way he filters the information through his physicality, or maybe he's just got an awkward lankiness to him. I don't know. But whatever like physical body language that Mike has is now become synonymous with the Jester. If you were to change that for anybody else, it just wouldn't feel the same.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask actually what the initial inspiration was for the Jester, just again for any newcomers. Yeah, because the first short film, was this over a decade ago now?
It's 9 years. Okay, not
Yeah.
over a decade.
Okay,
We're not that
sorry.
old yet.
Uh-huh. Okay, so what was the initial inspiration back then? Besides, I know that the intention with him was to like create a villain that was sort of the opposite to the hyper violent stuff you'd already made, but just beyond that, like where did he come from?
Yeah, it's funny because when I'm sad that I don't have like an answer that's like, yeah, it struck me in the middle of the night and I saw this tall character in the orange. There was nothing like that. It was exactly what you said. It was trying to do something different than what we had done in the past. And every short film that we made, no matter what it was, we wanted something in it to be teaching us something new. Trying something new every time. We didn't want to be complacent or just keep repeating ourselves. So we had done Maniacs with baseball bats let's try something else. And that's what informed the the intention of the character, him being so much of a character, where none of our stuff before that really had that. And then the look of him was just a result of circumstance. It was literally in one day driving around to Spirit Halloweens and Party Cities and like, oh, this is cool. What's this? What's this on the clearance rack over here? And that's the orange suit. And well, now the suit is like, it looks like a party suit. It's really loud visually. Let me give it to my friend who does cosplay stuff to dirty it up. Maybe him dirtying up the suit will knock down some of that, just the loudness of the orange. And by the end of that process, you land somewhere, and we landed at the Jester. So for our situation with the Jester specifically, it was something that we found along the way. It wasn't something that was like a fully formed idea from the get-go. But the thing about the character that excited me the most, and maybe also informed his behavior and his appearance, is the last shot of the short film. That was the thing that made me as an audience member interested in this character. The fact that he responds differently to somebody else's reaction means, oh, there's more going on here than just a berserk maniac. He's got ideas in his head. We don't necessarily know what they are, but they're there.
I feel like you have mentioned too that part of the circumstance of the Jester was that he was dialogue free by circumstance, and I was curious if that was because the sound. Was that?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. For the first short film, every single sound that you hear in the first short, every line of dialogue that my character has is all done in my room afterwards.
ADR.
Yeah.
We love it. So did the Jester ever have dialogue or no?
No.
From the jump, you guys weren't going to have sound?
No.
Okay.
We didn't consider ourselves actors. So we were, it wasn't like an acting exercise that one of us was like, I gotta be this character. It's just like, we're putting the tall guy in the suit and we put a mask on him, so that we save ourselves from that. And, it was the least amount of acting that we had to do. That was always what we went for.
Yeah, if you guys didn't know, Colin does star in just the first short film, or you make an appearance in the third one?
That's it, just the first one.
Just the first one. Right. Okay. Now, okay. Everybody says like their favorite things about low budget work. I'm especially curious for the short films because you've mentioned in the past, like, we had maybe $500, and people always say their favorite thing is, it forces me to be more creative. We have to be so scrappy and all of that. But what do you think the worst part of having no money is?
Oh boy.
Too hard to choose.
Well, I think it depends on the scenario, because we have no money when we make the short films, but we have unlimited time because we're operating on our own schedule. So yeah, we only have $500, but we can come back next weekend to get all the stuff that we didn't get. And then if we go back through that week and look at the footage and it doesn't look very good, we can go back and get that whenever we want. Jester 2, the short film, was an example of that. We got kicked out of shooting in downtown Claremont. So halfway through that short, it changes to Christmas time because that's when we were able to get back. And behind Nick, who is tied to the picnic tables, you can see the Christmas tree has appeared behind him. So I think having no money sucks. Having no time, I think, sucks more. So if I had to pick the thing that sucks the most about not having money, I think it is not being able to pay anybody. You're having to rely on. That's why we always only had 5 people, because it was us 5 friends. We were already friends, so we all kind of knew what the end goal was. With each of these projects, we wanted to make this thing, and with other people, you can, if you're that kind of person, and there are those kinds of people, you can just motivate somebody to go help you out for free. But we couldn't, so
Yeah.
it was always just 5 of us, and I think a little bit of money would have helped out with just getting a little bit more help from more talented people.
Right. But I mean, in any case, you were able to eventually, you've mentioned like get the call to produce the feature. And I couldn't find a ton of the production info online. I was hoping maybe you could walk us through that story. I think you mentioned that Epic Pictures provided funding. So I just was so curious, like how that came about, how you ended up in contact, and how did the first feature happen?
But it was, I think it was over social media, maybe. Some guy sent me a message and was like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about the Jester." And I was like, "Get in line, pal. I get messages like this all the time from freaks and weirdos." But
Really?
oh yeah,
We might have to talk about that a little more.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
there was a guy that I ended up having a phone call with who was like bragging about how he had like a standing dinner reservation with Robert Downey Jr. every week, and he wanted me to direct some clown movie that he had $1 million for, and I was like, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not your guy. But
yeah, are we sure that was real? Or
no, it wasn't real. It couldn't have
Okay.
been real. And that's what I thought about this too. And for some reason, I don't know why, but he was actually persistent, and he found my email address somehow and contacted me through that. And I was like, okay, let me look this guy up and see who he is. And he was a real guy. He was Patrick Ewald, who is the CEO of Epic Pictures. And I was like, uh-oh, I've been blowing off a real guy. So called him one day, and he was very just blunt and straightforward and said, "Somebody showed me your short film. I think it's great." I think what he thought was great was probably the views. I think that's what caught their attention more than anything else. But
very modest.
He was. He basically said we make low budget feature films, and he loves movies, so he doesn't like going through all the red tape of the studio system, and just wants to provide filmmakers the chance to make their movies for well, not a lot of money. And it'll be 3 weeks, and it'll be in Maryland, and you can write it if you want, or we can get writers. And oh, by the way, you can bring the guy who played the Jester in the shorts too. That's fine. And I was like, oh yeah, and he was like, because I assume that you've been wanting to make a Jester feature for a while now, right? And I was like, gulp, yes. But that was never. I had no ideas for any feature films at that time, much less the Jester, and that was always those conversations usually lasted about 2 sentences, where it was, oh, what if we? No, it was because he was never designed for a longer narrative. He was always designed specifically for the short film format, meant to feel like an urban legend. How do you do that with a feature film?
So then, in an alternate universe, what would you have been, or what were you actually pursuing at the time if the Jester didn't come along?
We were
in feature form, I mean, sorry.
We were just continuing to. We had no plan. Our plan was just, we're going to keep making the stuff that we want to make. The Jester did well, which means there is an audience out there for the stuff that we like. So maybe something else we make will land. I think our big goal, if we had one, was to get something in a festival at some point. But no, it was never. That was like a realistic goal. Making a feature film was never a reality to us. And let that be a lesson to anybody out there watching. Just come up with something, just in case. So you don't have 4 weeks to write a feature film for the first time.
Oh wow, that's okay. That's really quick. At least though, like you maintained the energy of the Jester because you've said the intention was never to make him a slasher, like a proper like he'd fold people in half, but not necessarily slash people. And I think that the coolest, most unique part of the Jester is definitely the magic component. And is magic a any part of your life, or is it just for the character? Like, what inspired that?
Nope.
No affinity for
I don't
magic.
care about
No?
magic.
Okay, so then okay, for the movies then, like who were the biggest inspirations? Like where did the tricks come from then? Like you must have had to kind of dig deep because I don't remember if I saw was there like a magic consultant in the credits? I don't know if I saw that.
There was for the Jester 2.
Mm.
He actually lent us a ton of magic props for that we use for set deck for there is like a magic shop in the second movie,
Mhm.
and we couldn't have had that location if he didn't just send us a ton of stuff to borrow.
Mhm.
But no, when it comes to the magic tricks, it was if I know a magic trick, that means everybody should know it because I'm not interested in magic. So
Mhm.
the big classics, the sawing a woman in half, or they do the shell game in the first Jester feature with the cups and the salt pepper shakers.
Mhm.
If we could figure out a way to make it the most obvious, Mike and I always like to joke that the Jester is actually kind of a bad close-up magician. So he has to pull in these other elements and use. I always love his initial interactions with people. They're always like, great. It's like
Mhm.
pretty basic, and then he's got to up the ante, which involves body parts or whatever. But yeah, it's the magic tricks are always very simple, and how can you take the simplest thing and then twist it into something that is upsetting, not necessarily gory or shocking, but just upsetting was our goal, and weird. We wanted to keep
Mm.
things weird.
Yeah, I think mission accomplished on that one. Though with the uh with everything being in jest and like his miming nature, obviously there are a lot of allegations of a certain inspiration. And even though in the past you stated you feel the most obvious inspirations for your film is John Carpenter's Halloween, you're inspired by Flanagan. He was never supposed to be a slasher villain. Someone else always tends to come up, and so obviously I got to ask what your opinion of people's perception is that your work is a Terrifier ripoff.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to live under a rock to be unaware of that discourse around the Jester, which is interesting because I feel like that conversation only started after the first feature came out.
Mm.
When the short films came out, I remember my first exposure to Art the Clown, I believe is his name. I think that
Mhm.
is the gentleman you're referring to. But
Sounds right.
um, there would be people in the comments saying, "Oh, something, something, Art the Clown." It was never you copied Art the Clown. It was always this guy should meet Art the Clown or whatever
Mm.
people say.
Yeah.
It was that and Payday 2, whatever that is. Apparently, it's a video game about bank robbers and they wear masks. And somebody said this looks like that. But
Mhm.
I was like, oh, what is this Art the Clown that everybody keeps talking about? So I looked it up and I was like, oh, it's a movie where there's a clown guy in it.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I was signed on to make the first Jester that I was like, I have no frame of reference for what a movie made at this budget level even looks like. The lowest budget movies that I can think of are like in the $1 to $5 million range, and we're gonna be aiming in the $100,000 range. Like I have no idea what you
Mm.
can do there. So the one movie that I could find was The Terrifier. So I watched it, and right away, the first thing that comes up is Epic Pictures Dread. And I was like, hey, those are the guys. This is a real company. So,
Mhm.
but other than that, it was like, yeah, I mean, respect for what those guys and that team have been able to accomplish. Obviously, it's clearly a property that a lot of other studios are trying to, they all want their Terrifier thing, but that's not an interest of mine. When it comes to, and that's why it can be really discouraging when you see instantly everybody has their minds made up when the first trailer comes out or the first movie comes out, and yeah, the marketing that is done by Epic leans intentionally really heavily on this is I think they literally say it in the Jester 2 trailer from the studio that brought you Terrifier. So they are intentionally drawing comparisons. Every article that comes out for the press releases draws comparisons, because it gets clicks and it gets eyeballs.
Right.
I honestly don't know if we would have been given a Jester opportunity had it not been for Terrifier. But that's an assumption I'm making based on, like, from their perspective. From my perspective, that was never an interest of mine. I mean, you look at the Jester shorts, and he doesn't slash anybody, and it was heavily encouraged that changed. So
That was going to be one of my next questions, actually. Was like, the comparisons to Terrifier. Did you feel like that hurt or help the overall creative process?
I mean, it's really hard to say.
Sorry, I don't want to get you in trouble here.
No, I mean it's the mandate was to make it more intense. They didn't say specifically how to make it more intense, but they assumed that we had made it the way that we did because it was for YouTube. And it's like, no, we made it the way that we wanted it. We didn't like, oh, we got to make this PG because it's YouTube. I think what the Jester does is the first short is pretty messed up, but yeah, it was. They needed more kills in the movie. And so we had to figure out, kind of for the first time, I think we intentionally, with Jester Chapter 3, the short, we intentionally walked back a kill. We were like, I think it feels to us like that was disingenuous to the character. It felt like his forte was humiliation rather than mutilation. And that was just more interesting to us, is a horror villain that humiliates his victims as opposed to like cuts them in half or whatever. So now we had to figure out, how does the Jester even kill somebody? We'd never thought about that really before.
I guess maybe we should go back a little bit, because I similarly couldn't find a ton of production info online for the sequel. What happened between the first and second movie? Like, when was the decision made to make the sequel? I guess just kind of walk us through that timeline.
I started writing ideas for a Jester 2 script right when the movie was done. It hadn't come out yet, but the movie was done, the first Jester feature, because I was like, if they do come ask for a Jester 2, which they had talked about before the script for Jester 1 was even approved, and that's like, come on, guys, I don't want to be thinking about franchise stuff right now. I want to hit 90 pages first, which I've never had to do. But I wanted to give myself more time this time, as opposed to the 4 weeks to write a script. I wanted maybe some more weeks to write a script. And I went all in on being really devoted to the first Jester features. Like, I didn't want to abandon those ideas or those characters or any of that stuff. And then the first movie came out, and I was like, well, and it took a lot. And I finished that script. I had that script, and it was bad, just as anyone could guess. But It inherited all of the problems that the first movie had, and was just much longer and very. If you thought the first movie was sad, this one was way sadder. I don't know what was wrong with me, but then yeah, I think it just took some. You know what it was actually that made me want to entirely switch gears was I had seen some of these before where people did watch throughs, I guess, of the Jester shorts. Like they would make video. I guess it's similar to what
Like
you
reactions?
do. Yeah.
Yeah, I do like watch alongs. Yeah.
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 But some people have done reactions to the Jester shorts, and those are always interesting just to see, what things land and what don't. And there was this video that the streamer did where this person watched through for the first time. They had no idea who the Jester was. And they watched through the first 3 Jester short films. And by the end of the 3rd short, they were a Jester fan. Like, they loved the character, they loved the shorts. And I was like, damn, something about those shorts really works. And then immediately after the 3rd short, they watched the trailer for the first Jester feature. And immediate disappointment. They were unhappy with the way the character looked. They were unhappy with the tone of the trailer. They were just... And I was like, okay, this was like the perfect test. It was like the perfect experiment to witness somebody in real time go from knowing nothing about the Jester to watching the shorts and becoming a big Jester fan. And then something about even just the glimpse at the feature turned them off to it. And I was like, I have to figure out what that is. I have to like really sit down and think about, what is it? Big changes that we made for the feature? Was this a death by 1,000 cuts thing? The suit is a little different. The mask is different. This is different. That's different. And now, because of all of these things, the whole thing feels different. So my goal with the second one was it's if we're not if we're speaking plainly, it's a reboot. It starts from he rips the mask off from the first movie in an effort to say, well, we're not doing that anymore. So we're doing this now, and this hopefully feels closer to the source material. It for years after the 3rd Jester short, which we made with the intention of saying, that's it, we're done. It didn't matter what we put out after that. It could be things that we thought were really good and really showed our growth as storytellers and filmmakers. The comments were just inundated with, where's the next Jester? Where's Jester 4? And so for a while, the Jester felt like a curse to us. So I wanted this time, this is the Jester 4. This is the short film that's 82 minutes that everybody's been wanting for the past 6-7 years, however long it's been. And that was the goal with Jester 2, which I didn't even know if it should be called Jester 2, but we just never changed it.
Well, it sounds like you tonally were like trying to get back to sort of the basics, like the urban legend feeling of the original short films, but it's quite a bit more story rich than I would say maybe even the first movie. So I was curious, like how these choices landed. You've got a lead who is a character that very much like matches the antagonist in kind of like an energy, ability. So talk to me a little bit about Max and the decision to kind of put her on an even playing field with the Jester.
I think that came from when we threw the original Jester 2 script in the garbage. I'd given us the challenge. What story can we tell where the Jester is the protagonist? Where we're not following somebody that we don't know and we don't care about, because the movie's called The Jester, so we have to learn to care about them, and then the Jester shows up and does his stand around thing. I don't want to do that again. So is it possible to take this character who doesn't speak and we know nothing about and make him the main character and make everybody else the side characters? And we tried. the best way that we could figure out was, well, you have to tie him to the main character. That's the only way, and do a co-lead thing. So that's where Max kind of came in, and we just thought it would be a much more interesting dynamic if she was a 15-year-old girl to this like ancient whatever he is, and the relationship dynamic that I used as a model for most of this movie was Michael Mann's Collateral between Max and Vincent in that movie, where you have a hitman who is now, due to unforeseen circumstances, is now tied to this other person that in any other scenario they'd be dead. But because it's this specific circumstance, they have to work together. And I mean, Collateral rules. I'm not at all comparing our movie.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm so sorry.
I'm not at all comparing our movie to Collateral, but the thing that I so desperately wanted to look to that movie for inspiration was the push-pull dynamic between Max and Vincent in that movie. Yes, Vincent is a hitman, killer, cold-blooded monster of a man, but Max in that movie is kind of a wayward, he's stuck in a rut. He's got dreams, but no intentions of pursuing them. And here comes Vincent, who speaks so plainly. And maybe this monster, this cold-blooded killer, is exactly the person that Max needs in his life at that moment. And I just love that there are moments in that movie where you're like, I just want them to be friends, but I know it can never be. And I wanted, if we could just like capture a little bit of that and apply that to Max and the Jester in this movie, then I would feel very good about that. And that's why her name is Max.
Yeah, I totally see that. I think it's so much more interesting when you have a lead who is like a little bit morally gray, because I feel like your Max has agency without being stupid. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I'd say successful there. But I guess just to wind down and kind of wrap up some of like the Terrifier talk, I feel like a lot of people tend to degrade the value of the mockbuster, and even though we've established like the Jester is a lot more than that, I think that maybe the worst thing is the way that the audience will misperceive your work, but it seems like you're not really shy about approaching that. You mentioned that you watched a guy that was like reacting to the Jester and everything. So how in general do you approach consuming content like that, if at all, beyond that?
Content specifically?
About the Jester. I mean, obviously, like it's developed this kind of whole culture of, a lot of people calling it a Terrifier ripoff and things like that. And, people make big ugly thumbnails about the Jester ripoff. And yeah. So I don't know. How do you approach that culture, if at all?
I don't. I learned after the first movie I haven't, honestly, I don't really know what the consensus of the Jester 2 is, because I am staying away from all of that stuff. Like I said, it's hard to not feel discouraged when you see the internet has made up its mind, because once that happens, there's no changing it. And it's unfortunate, because you can yell at the top of your lungs and say, no, look at the dates of the short film, do the math. Like it doesn't matter. People see a thing and they make up their mind and they move on with their lives. But for me, I wanted to do justice to the short films. I wanted to do justice to that character, and for the people who I've heard people say, I grew up with this short film, which is like, it's 9 years ago, pal. Come on.
Oh my God.
But the people who grew up with those short films, I wanted this to feel like, if you've been waiting for something like this, here it is. It's the reason, to me, my interpretation of this is the reason Terrifier was so successful is because it was supply that was being demanded unknowingly. And the only reason that people found out that it was in demand was because that filmmaker wanted to make that, because he wasn't seeing something like that. That doesn't mean that now you should make nothing but Terrifier things, because that demand has already been supplied. So I think the only way that you can anticipate, or I don't think there is a way to anticipate what is going to resonate with people, what's going to be popular. It has to resonate with you first. You have to be the first one demanding it. And then if you supply that to yourself, maybe you're supplying it to somebody else too. And that is how we got those Jester shorts. And that's what I had to go back 9 years in my head and figure out, well, how would they have done it? You know, what would they have wanted to see?
Well, I hope that at least, because you're speaking about like once the internet makes up its mind and all that, I hope with that knowledge you can kind of depersonalize that element of it, and because you are ultimately making it for yourself and for the fans that want to see it. I feel like I've probably taken enough of your time. I hope we got to cover at least some uncharted territory today. And last question, because I must. You mentioned recently that you're doing some writing not involving the Jester. So what is next?
That's a good question, because this is just the honest truth. I have a regular job. I have a regular day grown-up job. I work at Universal Studios. So, what's next for me will also be a surprise to me when it happens. I was able to make these two Jester movies because the time frames are so short, but I just want to make another movie. I went into Jester 2 thinking, well, this could very well be my last movie. This could come out and everyone could say, never give that guy a chance again. and that's it. But so I tried to put everything that I had into Jester 2. So if I do get to make another movie, I would love to do something completely different. I think that would be good for my brain.
Well, if you had to stay in franchises, I know that you've mentioned that you love Alien. How would you play in that sandbox?
I don't know, because I had there's so much new Alien stuff that's been coming out over the past couple of years. So
that's
like
true.
Romulus was just like, thanks, Fede, you did it. So it's like, I don't know where you go from here. Alien Earth is like a completely different thing. So I honestly would like to just do something new. The Jester, even though it's only one super small, low budget feature, and then 3 YouTube short films, it's still like going into Jester 2. It's like, okay, there is baggage that comes with this. And we have to honor this thing from that, and we have to do this from that, but we can't do that. And so I think starting from a clean slate and not bringing any baggage from previous iterations. And like for me, something that I thought about was, I don't want every subsequent Jester movie to feel like it's making up for the last one. I don't want it to feel like it's having to like make amends or answer questions or whatever, change something. It's like, I want to make something that can just start from the ground up and be presented as just stand on its own merit, rather than constantly being compared to something else, whatever that something else might be.
All right. Well, I'll be looking forward to it. Thank you so much for all your time and letting us kind of take a peek behind the curtain of an independent filmmaker with a day job. This has been really great. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And that concludes the interview. Thank you for sticking around. Big ups to Colin for being willing to chat about the Jester for probably at least like the 50th time this year. Stand up guy. We had a longer chat after we finished recording and we circled back on a few topics. I got to hear some of the subtext of his earlier answers and it was truly enlightening as a filmmaker. We could kind of commiserate on a lot, you know, like looking back at old work, especially hindsight, the struggles of being a low budget filmmaker. When you elevate to any kind of studio environment, no matter how small, the pressure is intense and the director has to shoulder so much of that weight, not just during production, but after the movie releases, you know? You have a lot to gain as a creative because maybe, hey, this will lead to more jobs, but you also have a lot to lose because who does the entire audience blame when something goes wrong? Broad audiences are not looking for all these nitty-gritty kind of nuances. Sorry you couldn't be privy to that conversation, but we have to keep some of the movie magic a mystery. If you haven't already, I strongly encourage you to continue following down this rabbit hole and at least check out all the short films on YouTube right now. And then of course, check out the features. I think that both movies are streaming for free on several platforms, so it should be super easy for you to find everything. He's someone that I strongly hope will return to feature filmmaking someday, so I just really wanted to make you guys all aware of him, and so that I'm not the only one that's like bugging him to make another movie. But that's all from me today. Regularly scheduled content will be resuming after this. No more interviews coming up. Nonetheless, I hope that you enjoyed this more special video, and I hope I got you in the next one. Bye.